Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, dear friends. I am not a medical doctor, I am an engineer, and I am going to talk probably a little more from a technological point of view than from a medical point of view, with the link with both, of course. So I would like to first make a few preliminaries, not to explain more this frequency or whatever, but to point out a few things that are rather often forgotten and which may lead to severe misunderstanding. Then I would like to speak a little about the electric field and the polarization, and I probably follow quite nicely the talk made by Igor, because he has been talking about that already. Thermodynamics. Nobody likes thermodynamics, but it might be very important. Dosimetry, some thermal consideration, essentially the blood-brain barrier, parameters of microwave exposure, and I shall end that with isothermal effects or micro effects if you prefer. We all know what is frequency. We all know what is wavelength. We also know that the product of the two is a constant. In vacuum, the constant is about 300,000 kilometers per second. What we should not forget, never, is that that constant is a function of the material. If a wave goes through vacuum, if it goes through glass, through bricks, or if it is inside a human body, the constant is not the same. Inside a human body, there is a factor of about 9 between what it is at vacuum and what it is in the body. That means that at a given frequency, the wavelength is 9 times, say 10 times smaller than the wavelength in vacuum, and so that at, say, 1 gigahertz, in vacuum the wavelength would be 30 centimeters. In the body it is about 3 centimeters. We should never forget that. And finally, that microwaves is a very peculiar range of frequencies. It goes from about 100 megahertz, which is the standard frequency for transmitting frequency modulated waves, to about 300 gigahertz, that is way in the millimeter range. But we should always have in mind that wavelength at microwave is of the same order of magnitude as the object we use currently. Meter, decimeter, centimeter, millimeter. And because of the difference between vacuum and the human body, there is a ratio 10 about at 1 gigahertz. So we are indeed, well, quite similar to a range of a number of biological devices, components, etc., that we have in the body. The electric field, we should remember that it is a force. It is a force per unit charge. But it is very important, I think, to well remember that the electric field is indeed a force. It is not just something. The force that acts on charges. When there is an electric field into any material, for instance, the human body, their polarization is created or transformed into the body. And we define that by a polarization vector per unit volume. Adding the polarization vector to the electric field multiplied by the permittivity, that we obtain a general definition of the displacement vector, which is valid for all material, but it is really very easily quite complicated to start evaluating that. Because only in lossless materials the polarization is proportional and parallel to the electric field, collinear. Once there is anything that happens, it is no more the case. So, for instance, norms about protecting population against microwave fields, for instance, the norms consider only losses in the material. But But once you have losses, say thermal effects, but when you have losses, then the displacement, the polarization is delayed with respect to the electric field. That is not an opinion, it is proven scientifically since perhaps 100 years. And so the polarization, the displacement vector is not co-linear with the electric vector. So it is really quite rapidly complicated to evaluate. This is a graph typical over the frequency range 1000 Hertz, 1 gigahertz, 1 million, sorry, where it shows the real part of the relative permittivity, which is a constant at low frequencies. I have not shown what you have at the left. I'll come back to that. Then there is a range like for water where we have dipolar variation, and when that varies, I'm not very clever, sorry. When it varies, there are losses. Dipolar range, ionic range, that is about 1000 gigahertz, 1 terahertz, which is getting it in use now in technology, and above that, electronic. It should also be well remembered that when an electric field is applied to anything, for instance, the human body, that it is only the internal field which is of importance to the body. That is obvious, but it means that if a wave is coming in, part of that is reflected, part of it is going inside of the material. It is that only part that is of importance to the material. And that the main absorbent we have in the body is water. Scale effect is well known since also, say, perhaps 100 years or perhaps 90 years. Scale effect is a phenomenon which is well known, described mathematically, by which when a wave penetrates a material, for instance, a human body, and if there are losses, the amplitude of the wave decreases when it comes inside of the material. It is defined by a mathematical concept that is called skin depth. When we have 3 of those at 100 gigahertz, skin depth in the human body is about 1.5 centimeters. So at about 3 skin depths, say 5 centimeters, the power density that is inside of the material is less than 1% of what is outside. It means that our internal organs are shielded against microwave fields by that protection shield of the order of 5 centimeters. It also shows, and it is not an opinion, that children are less protected than adult people for that. Because the skin depth is about the same for children and adults because the material is the same. But on the torso for an adult of about 40 centimeters, 5 centimeters leave 30 centimeters inside with protected organs. While if you take a torso of a child, say 20 centimeters, with 5 centimeters on each side, only 10 centimeters are protected. That is 10 out of 20, while for an adult it is 30 out of 40. Quite a difference. One may say, or may have an opinion, that biological effects and microwaves are more important than at low frequency or extremely low frequency. That is not necessarily true. Because if you look at this, which I have shown, not shown in my preceding diagram, you see that the dielectric constant at very low frequency, say 50 Hertz, the one we are using here, that is of the order of 1 million. For the human body, at about 1 gigahertz, we are talking of about 80. At extremely low frequency, the dielectric constant of a living material is of the order of 1 million. So, well, I think that it is too often that people talk about only magnetic field at extremely low frequencies, I think that electric field can also be significant, and that there is not enough investigation on that. I come through thermodynamics. For at least engineering students, thermodynamics has always been a sort of a nightmare. It's pretty complicated. And the trouble is that if you investigate that together with biology and electromagnetics, then you really have a subject which is, it gives satisfaction. Thermodynamics has to be used to investigate some phenomena. Which ones? The ones about temperature. Electromagnetics, in electromagnetics, temperature is a consequence. It is not something on which you act. It is a consequence of heating. You can measure the temperature, you can observe that at higher density, power density, it increases, but you cannot control it. To control it, you need thermodynamics, because then you can investigate isothermal effects. And say I'm working now at constant temperature, and see if indeed non-thermal effects are possible or not. So that is really what I showed, temperature. Then, of course, temperature also defines entropy. I'm not going to enter into that because we should need some more time. Only extremely simple media are simple to investigate, and the human body is not a simple medium. Just one thing, it is only when there is no dispersion, and that means when there is no heating, which is not the case in the human body. It is only in that case that electromagnetic energy has a precise thermodynamic definition. If there is heating somewhere, for instance in the human body, the electromagnetic energy has no thermodynamic definition, which makes, of course, the investigation more complicated than very often. Dosimetry and SAR, this is just to, I wrote one definition of SAR here. It is not to have an equation, it is to show that the definition of SAR is differential, it is incremental, it is not just a small thing, square of the E field over the density of the matter. It is more complicated than that, and we need to know that equation to calculate the effect on, say, small parts of the body, for instance, the ear. And when we investigate then thermal effects, thermal aspects, I also put another equation which shows that the temperature increase over time when you have a combination of SAR and metabolic heating change and rate of heat loss and rate of heat gain and specific heat. You have to use that to calculate the variation in temperature, and unfortunately it is not always that simple. Still, the norms talk only about heating, thermal effects, but through the literature it is obvious that behavioral aspects are much more sensitive, a much more sensitive measure of effects than the thermal effects. We investigated that already in '94. At that time, GSM just came in Western Europe and publishing something of that subject that didn't, well, people did not react too much. Today, when you publish that, they say you don't like GSM, which is not the point. Similarly, pulsed field through the literature produce effects, biological effects, that are at lower level than the one that is needed to produce thermal effects. Measurements have been done of a rat, showing that there is a retarded learning because of microwave exposure. We did that ourselves, showing that rats lost memory after 15 minutes when they had been exposed for about 15 months. We also showed that there was an increase in mortality of the exposed group for rats. That was published in 2009. The thesis came out in 2008. With experiments on rat and on rabbit, I have been working on rabbits too. There are quite a number of results showing that there are indeed effects that are measurable. If we look at the blood-brain barrier, in 2012 already Lin produced a paper comparing, well, describing 30 investigations on animals. Interesting to know that the number with increased barrier permeability are about equal in number with those who do not, which is a 50-50 distribution. Interesting too that when we have, it's important to see what are the parameters of exposure, and especially about pulsed microwave, because it has been mentioned a number of times in the literature. There are frequency limits, which means that if you increase the frequency, you measure an effect. You still increase it, the effect disappears. You go at higher frequency, it reappears. There are also power windows. Power windows are the phenomenon in which you increase the power, you have a SAR, and then suddenly the SAR disappears. There is no result anymore. You increase the power and then it reappears again. To my knowledge, there are not really convincing explanations about those phenomena. That is about what I said. If we go to non-thermal, I'm not going to spend much time on that since this is indeed a colloquium devoted to hypersensitivity and it hasn't already been suggested. I just want to say that microwaves have been proposed as a trigger in a number of explanations. And if we do that, we have a theory available. That was the one established by Fröhlich. That was in 1980. Extremely interesting to read. And this is the case where a random energy supply in many modes, in many kinds of configurations, might excite, under some conditions, a single mode which could then be extremely strong. And I terminate by mentioning two measurements studies, which in my opinion cannot be explained by thermal consideration. One was published by Tabiello at the University of Palermo in Sicilia. That was around in the 90s. And they exposed heart of chicken embryos, isolated. They were beaten randomly, then submitted them to a sort of radar wave with microwaves, then nothing, then microwaves. And when the distance between the trains of microwave decreased, suddenly the heart became triggered by that and synchronized to the rate of the external frequency until going down the heartbeat increases and then suddenly stops to be synchronized again. I do not see how you can explain that by thermal effects because it is really a phase agreement. And I terminate, this is the last one, Shukova, and Soviet people, then Russian people, have illustrated the Saratov phenomenon. And to show it simply, above it is measured on an air-water interface surface. At the bottom it is shown on a human skin interface with air. You see the results are about the same. It's very interesting to see that it is something very complex. The frequency here is in gigahertz, from 48 to 120 gigahertz. It is a modulated wave, and the generator wobbles the frequency, then comes back and starts again. So it is a sweeping excitation. There are results, I'd say what are results, in the ranges between, say, 49 and 52, between something like 62 and 68 gigahertz, and also around 100, 110. The result is quite extraordinary. So one takes, say, water or human body. There is a wave at that frequency, for instance, 64 gigahertz, which is reflected. The measurements which appears there is not measured at that frequency. It is measured in a transverse direction with the incident plane. And the frequency that is measured is 1 gigahertz. So a wave at 62 gigahertz reflected produces a wave which is transverse, which is measured at 1 gigahertz. That also cannot, I think, be explained by the thermal effect, the thermal reason. It is really something totally different. And Shukova produced a small book on that. She demonstrated it by using, unfortunately, thermodynamics. Thank you for your attention.